Have you ever performed a magic trick at a gathering only to feel that something was missing? Like the trick didn't quite have the impact you'd hoped for. We've all been there. If you're like most magicians, you may be performing tricks without a cohesive structure, lacking the theatrical tension and continuity between effects that turns a few tricks into a memorable act. Maybe you don't care about creating theatrical magic, and that's okay. But even if you're just performing casually, understanding magic structure can elevate your performance from good to unforgettable. Who doesn't want to share magic that's unforgettable? The path to that is an act. Something more than just a random group of tricks performed in a narrative stream of consciousness. And in this episode of Erudite Magic, we're going to examine that exact thing. This discussion is all in the context of a book, Afterglow by John Graham. This small hardback book was published by Vanishing Ink. And there's a reason I'm going to use this book to talk through the topic of structuring your tricks into an act. But as we get into this, I want to be sure that you're aware I work for Vanishing Ink, so my views about this book may not be unbiased. So why use this book to talk about structure and your magic? Because that's what this book is. Although small by most book standards, it's only 51 pages. It's densely packed with an entire close-up act using only one ungimmicked deck of playing cards. John Graham, the author, is probably well known to most of you by now. He landed on our radar with his first book, Stage by Stage, which was all about taking what you already know from typically the close-up world and getting it to play for a bigger audience and developing that style of presentation. Later, he came along with some smaller books, Encore, also by Vanishing Ink, and Magic Between Friends, co-authored with his friend Ossie Wind. I'll drop some links down in the description below if you want to check out those reviews and learn more about John Graham. The only thing you really need to know for purposes of our discussion today is that he is a full-time professional magician and has been for many decades. He's studied and implemented the classics in his own work and performs on both stage and close-up. This book is focused on close-up card magic exclusively. But even within that subgenre of magic, there's room to build and grow as John shows us. Let's dive into what the book is and how it can help us understand an act structure. Do you want to elevate your magic from simple tricks to an unforgettable act? Well, you're going to need the right resources to master the art of performance. That's where the sponsor of this week's video, Don's Magic and Books, comes in. Whether you're looking for classic magic literature or the latest release, Don has you covered. Don's Magic and Books offers a wide selection of both used and new magic books. This week, you can get 10% off of almost every book on his website if you use the code SUMMER at checkout. These books are perfect for magicians at any level, helping you build a well-structured act that will amaze any audience. You can visit Don's Magic and Books through the link I'll put in the description below. Don't miss out on this summer special. Remember, use code SUMMER for 10% off. Don's Magic and Books, where every magician finds their next great act. Now, let's get back to our main topic and dive into how Afterglow by John Graham can help us understand the structure of a magic act. Everyone wants to know what's in the book. The bottom line is this book contains 7 dynamite card tricks. This isn't just my opinion, these are classics. The first trick within his act is I've Got a Surprise for You, as originally conceived by Eddie Fechter and now reimagined for this book. The purpose is to get into the action quickly, establish who you are, and surprise them with some great magic while you start to set up for the rest of the show that's coming. He proceeds into an ace assembly routine that he has customized from the pages of Tar Bell, and then that leads him into Numero Uno by Harry Lorraine. If you don't already know that trick, the participant selects a card, returns it to the deck, and after a little bit of byplay, the magician asks their participant to name a number and cuts off that many cards right to the participant's selection. Of course, then the participant wants to know, was that actually the number of cards? And as they count through them, it is. The next step is a triumph routine, finding the participant's cards in a messed up deck of shuffled face up into face down cards. You establish that you're going to do this twice. And immediately after you do the first triumph, you go into John's version of John Bannon's Play It Straight Triumph, one of the greatest and easiest to do Triumph routines of all time. It's different than just finding their card. I don't want to spoil the surprise for you, but it really fits nicely as a second piece to this and just continues to elevate the magic. At this point in John's routine, you're now set up to do the Lazy Man's card trick, again popularized by Harry Lorraine, and then finally, Out of This World, bringing everything back to your participants and the magic that they can create through the power of their own minds. The whole thing is designed to go together to present approximately 22 minutes of close-up card magic. Don't let the 22 minutes part turn you off if you don't think you can hold your audience's attention for that long. John also designed this to be slightly modular. What do I mean by slightly modular? Well, you're able to stop at any point along the routine. So if you feel like you're running out of time, you can stop after any trick, and it will feel complete as is. Of course, the author designed the whole thing to build. What that means is often you're setting up for the next trick while you're performing the previous trick, and sometimes you're ahead by even more than one trick. So while the instructions in the book are perfectly adequate to learn each card trick as is as a standalone piece, it's not really intended to replace the original write-ups if you were to want to perform these tricks individually. What are the pros and cons? Well, first of all, everything is explained very well. You'll have no problem learning this material. And on top of that, each trick is relatively easy to perform and remember. So you won't have to spend months in front of the practice mirror before you're ready to roll this out before an appreciative audience. Seriously, you're only going to know a few basic sleights to be performing these tricks. Sleights like a double turnover, a false cut or two, a very simple cull, and a buckle count. A lot of these sleights used are taught, or a variation is taught right here in the text, and the illustrations by Jeremy Dutcher are clear and comprehensive. That said, there is a section in the book where there are 4 piles A, B, C, and D that's clearly designated in the text, but the drawing does not actually have A, B, C, and D. Don't worry about it, you're not going to get lost. And it's not confusing based on the text which pile is which, it's just a small nitpick. The bottom line is that you'll have no trouble pairing the illustrations with the text to learn and perform these routines. Speaking of nitpicks, what are some of the cons about this book? There is no table of contents, but I think I understand that given the length of this book. It's so small that it's not really too hard to just riffle through the book and look for what you're trying to find and stop there. And in fact, the size itself may be a con if you're used to larger books with lots and lots of tricks. But given the tried and true nature of most of these effects, it's not exactly new and original creations that you might have to decide are for you. It seems like the size is less of a downer. And of course, it could be a con if you already know all of these tricks. After all, you would be effectively buying them again. And while you can learn each individual trick from the text, that's not really the intent. This really isn't a book of tricks. Sure, you're going to learn 7 awesome card tricks, but the real value is that it is a book showing you how to put together a close-up card act that can basically be performed anytime, anywhere, once you learn the routines. It's 22 minutes of entertainment that will play as small or as big as you need it to and leave a lasting impression. And don't forget, if you don't have the full amount of time, the 22 minutes at your disposal, you can stop basically after any one of the 7 tricks, with your audience being none the wiser. Now, Afterglow doesn't overtly teach you how to build an act. The author doesn't go into a lot of words to explain what makes an effective opener, middle, or closer. Now, John has already done that in his first book, Stage by Stage. Instead, he's showing us by example how to assemble tricks together so that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Each one of the tricks taught are dynamite on their own, but John is showing us how magic can be more, much more. As far as who would benefit from this book the most, magicians who want to put together a close-up card act that can play as short or as long as you need it to. It's hard to imagine a better set that's as flexible, impromptu, and powerful. One that can play to an intimate group or a larger corporate audience with cameras and projectors. And of course, that's the value, but let's talk about the cost. The book was unveiled at Magi Fest in January 2024, and it retails for $30. It has yet to see widespread release, and with the recent fire at the Vanishing Ink warehouse, I'm not sure exactly when it will be available. Now that's 7 killer tricks that if you were to go out and try to acquire, the original write-ups would probably cost you 10x that just to capture each one of these tricks. Plus you're getting the routine, thinking, and script that makes them all work together. What this boils down to is in your decision, you have to decide, would you rather have a large book of tricks where you have to cull out the hidden gems or figure out what works for you, or are you looking to buy a put together solution for a card magic act? One that's ready to go, has been road tested, has that modular approach, and definitely builds with your audience. This is different than a typical magic book, but I think it's different in a good way. It forces you to think about what you're doing with your audience. What kind of journey are you taking them on? Do your tricks have a theme, or do they build the dramatic tension? Maybe you have an act that does that already, and if so, I'd love to hear from you. What's in your set down in the comments below. If you like discussing things like this about how to build tricks into an act, be sure to subscribe to the Erudite Magic Digest. Link is in the comments down below. I send out an email once a week with topics like this that we can discuss and learn from together. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.